This has got to be one of the nicest boardrooms I've been in for a long time. It is fantastic to have the big boss of Peugeot in South Africa, Francisco Gaie. Have I got that right?
That's correct, yes. Thank you, Marius. Thank you very much.
How did you explain it to me, how to remember your surname?
Very simply, it's like Afrikaans, the word for buyer with a G, Gaie.
Not going to get it wrong. Francisco, history. Where did you grow up? You're South African.
Yes.
How did you get into the motor industry?
Well, I grew up in Pretoria, went to Westport Citroën at that time. Motor industry, I accidentally fell into it. My father-in-law arranged an interview for me with a friend of his. Arrived at he was at a dealership that time, arrived there, went for the interview, thought maybe not my thing, but I need a job, so I'll quickly take it, and maybe in the next 6 months I'll find something else. Well, here I am still, number of years later. Don't want to leave it. I think it's an industry that I enjoy being in. Yeah. And it's a changing industry, which I find very interesting and enjoyable.
Now listen, we're gonna get into the changing industry because, geez, it's been quite a dynamic year. But I mean, did you grow up as a passionate car lover? I mean, were you like most South Africans, loving your cars, loving motorsport?
Yeah, not a petrol head by no means, but always loved cars. My first love was motorbikes. At 13, I got my first motorbike, which was a 1984 MB5, baby blue.
Baby motorbike. Blue, got it done.
That bike was polished every day, nearly of my life as a 13-year-old. And I remember from Bike SA cutting out the little bikes and sticking it all over the room.
So cool.
So the love was for motorbikes at first, and with time changed to cars as well.
What did you study? I mean, what is your background? Because I'm seeing a big change with motor companies in South Africa. Their bosses are young, fresh. They've come from very different backgrounds.
Yeah. So for me, when I finished school, I was a typical 18-year-old. Didn't know what to go study, so convinced my parents I'm going to London for a year at that time. As soon as I realized that I'm going to be there for longer than a year, I didn't want to be a barman for all that time, so I actually joined the Metropolitan Police in London. I was a police constable there.
Seriously?
For 6 years, in the east end of London called Hackney and Stoke Newington.
No way.
Then I returned a few years later. One morning woke up and said I'm coming back to South Africa. Went to University of Pretoria. I studied BCom Law there first, and as soon as I completed that degree, I went to Stellenbosch. And Stellenbosch, I studied my honours degree in economics, and then from there into the motor industry.
It's radical though, because I mean, most people go to London and go work in a pub. I mean, it was a typical South African thing, but you decided to go and get a job looking after the drunk South Africans who were working in pubs.
Definitely met a few of the drunk South Africans, and they had very surprising faces when you spoke to them in Afrikaans in the middle of London.
Like, what? Francisco, but I mean, it's let's talk now about 2017, and you mentioned the industry being very dynamic and volatile, I suppose. I mean, it's been a big year. A lot of confusion in South Africa at the moment because obviously, beginning of the year, Peugeot globally buys out Opel. Obviously, the big announcement now with changing of management structure for Peugeot here in South Africa, but also like General Motors pulling out. What do you see going ahead for the year? I mean, are things going to settle?
Look, for me, I think the next 12 to 18 months for the industry, for the motor industry itself, will still be under pressure for that period. It is a difficult time. I think we'll see still a lot of consolidation like we have seen globally, but also locally at OEM level and at dealership level and group level, we'll see some consolidation. So it's going to be a tough 12 to 18 months for us, but I think the big message behind that is we need to adapt as an industry.
For sure.
We need to adapt as manufacturers, importers, distributors, dealerships and groups. That adaptation is not only changed by our market conditions that forces us to change, it's also forced upon us by a changing consumer and consumer requirements and consumer needs. So for me, it's all about adapting. Yeah. That's what we as an industry and we as Peugeot South Africa also needs to do, and what we are doing.
Talk to me now. I mean, obviously a few days ago, big announcement with the management structural change for Peugeot here in South Africa. Just explain it for me and obviously for the consumer so they really understand what has happened.
Yeah, so I think the first message which is important for me is that for the first time in Peugeot South Africa's history, we are 100% locally managed by South Africa, and we've got a full South African team, and that changes how we see the future and how we can implement changes for our requirements in South Africa. The actual changes happen is we've got a holding company which is called VT Holdings, which is a Japanese firm.
Okay.
They have bought a majority shareholding into Peugeot Citroën South Africa from Peugeot International. And through our Japanese company, they've got a local subsidiary which is called Trust Absolute. And that is where I come from. I was the Chief Operating Officer of that company, and now changing over to the Managing Director of Peugeot South Africa.
It's interesting you talk about this 100% South African owned thing, because what for me is important, I'm not seeing it only now with Peugeot, but it was the same with Alfa and Fiat, with Mitsubishi. They've gone with young dynamic directors, South African companies being run by South Africans, because our market is pretty unique.
It is unique, and I think why a lot of manufacturers are doing that, and why certainly we think it's a benefit for us, is for the first time now, we as a South African management team can say, does the products we import, does it suit our requirements in South Africa? If not, let's not import that specific model. Let's choose a different model or different derivative that makes sense for our South African consumers. And I think that's why we see nationally in South Africa, that's the route everyone's going, is to say, locals know what locals want.
Yeah.
Let's have a South African company run by South Africans for South Africans with quality French products.
It's interesting you mentioned Peugeot, Citroën, South Africa. I mean, obviously Citroën no longer officially here, but I'm assuming you guys are still looking after Citroën. I mean, it's in your interests.
For sure, the company's called Peugeot Citroën South Africa. We are no longer importing Citroën vehicles. The decisions was made at that stage to say that, look, Citroën at the moment doesn't have a product that suits the requirements of South Africa. And secondly, we want to focus on Peugeot brand, and we do not want to split our resources and energy at this moment. So for our Peugeot customers out there, although we're not bringing the vehicles anymore, every single Peugeot dealership in South Africa is a service center, and the Citroën customers are equally important for us as our Peugeot customers, and we will look after them.
What I just want to change, I mean, I know I've gone on and on about this on Ignition GT over all the years. I love the French brand, and South Africans just seem to be stuck in a time when there might have been issues in terms of parts availability and in terms of service. But I mean, that has changed so long ago. I mean, you guys are sitting with massive stock availability, delivering 4 times a day to your dealer network. How do you change South Africans' understanding of that, listen, this is a fantastic product, it's winning best engines, car of the year in Europe? How do you change that mindset here?
Yeah, so the first thing is that we are quite realistic about the challenges, and that there's no short-term solution to it. Everything we are doing and the decisions we're taking at Peugeot South Africa is to say, does this make sense for the long term? So yeah, we've got a massive parts store here in Johannesburg, we've got great deliveries, we've got massive parts stock holding to address that shortcomings. We are working on part supplies in terms of having what we call a Peugeot economy service in future to address the parts of costing for vehicles out of warranty and out of service plan. And it's changing that mindset, but what is important for us is to say you can have all the marketing in the world and all the messages in the world around the perceptions out there from a French brand. What is important for us is the action behind those messages. We need to show consumers out there, not just say that we've got parts availability, show them, and when they come into our dealers, they have top-notch quality service with parts availability that is a value for money proposition.
Well, I want to talk about the car that we're driving in, because this is a massive sneak peek for us here on Ignition, because this is obviously only coming out in end of July, 3008. You're talking about importing cars that are key for the South African market. South Africans are SUV crazy. This 3008 is a massive departure for Peugeot. I mean, this is probably your first official real SUV.
It is. It started with a 2008, but for us the 3008 is truly the big one for us to say that, look, Peugeot is here in South Africa with a great SUV car. It is big, it is bold, and it is strong. It's the interior, the exterior, the design. We like to always say it's got the robustness of a Germanic car with the Italian, with the Latin flair in it. So it is, an amazing car.
I'm just blown away. I mean, I'm going to say this because it's a good selling point. I always loved the design in Citroën, and I'm seeing a lot more of that Citroën creativity that's come through into the Peugeot. The switchgear and everything is flippin' amazing, and just a really upmarket, premium, comfortable driving environment to be.
For sure. So for us, especially on the interior, you'll find the iCockpit, which in future will be in every model and derivative that we bring to South Africa. So the iCockpit is really about saying, we have a fluid design inside, we are adapting, we are changing, we are looking towards the future to say, how do our customers want to feel when they're inside the car? If we look at our mobile phones, which is the connected device in our pocket, really our car should be similar to that. We should be able to do everything and anything while we're in our car. And that is what the iCockpit is all about.
well, what I've always been impressed with, and maybe South African consumers haven't always understood that, but your cars come extremely well spec'd as standard, whereas with all the other manufacturers, you're paying for that. It looks like it's exactly the same in terms of what you bring in the 3008. Obviously, key is going to be pricing for a car like this, because you want to actually be a bit cheeky and a bit aggressive.
For sure. So I think the first thing is that we've made a deliberate decision then that for any of our models, and for that entire range and all the derivatives, our entry level must be well spec'd. So the specs you'll find on the 3008 is standard across the range, you know, and you do get some additional stuff on the higher end. But for us, there's a deliberate decision to say our entry level car, when you compare it to its competitors, must not be equally spec'd as an entry level car. Our entry level is not an entry level car in that sense.
What's amazing, I mean, you were telling me before we got in the car, there's like a 6-month waiting list for the 3008 in Europe.
Yes.
You know, I'm just really hoping that it's going to be a similar story for you guys here in South Africa. 5008 is coming, which is like the real big SUV as well. So I think that's the key focus, is bringing cars that South Africans want to drive. Maybe that was a challenge for Peugeot. Small cars kind of isn't the thing for SA anymore.
Yeah, so for me, the product lineup coming, you know, we're very aggressive on products coming. We've got a 208 today, we've got a 2008, now the 3008 launching soon, then the 5008 and the Traveller Combi as well, and that's only in the next few months.
Wow,
so
exciting.
we're very aggressive on the product range that we want to bring to South Africa.
Francisco, 10 minutes flown by like that. We could chat a lot longer. I think I'd love to chat to you about some of your stories about the COP days, but fantastic to meet with you. I think it's a really exciting time ahead, and I'm glad that Peugeot is going nowhere. I just hope more South Africans catch a wake up to the good product that's out there.
Thank you very much, Marius. Yeah, and that's the key message. Peugeot South Africa is here, and we're here to stay.